Hey guys, this last week I attended my youngest brother's high school graduation from a very fundamentalist Pentecostal school. My brother is not a Christian anymore, and he has had major difficulties with this school as they basically cram Jesus down his throat. I don't think I realized how bad he had it. My mom, who is very much a fundy, firmly believes that the school is better for him than public school. I've never really gotten the chance to look at the curriculum, so as in areas such as English and math, she might be right. He has shown better progress in these two areas than he did back in public school because of the way the program is structured. Unfortunately, what he has told me about his science class is just appalling, with little emphasis on actual science and more on indoctrination using very vague comical overviews of what evolutionists believe versus what we believe, and we use the Bible for evidence. He told me that everything is self-studied, meaning they work by themselves in workbooks using a curriculum called ACE, or Accelerated Christian Education, at their own pace with very few lectures. Basically, their schooling is like pure homework with a tutor. This style shows some interesting merit, however, other than chapel, there is little interaction with other students discussing the topics. Also, they only have a few topics they teach: math and English, which involves reading Christian books and writing reports on it, earth science and social studies, of which his junior year had some history and government, but this year basically went through the book of Proverbs studying virtues and values. There were no art classes as far as he could tell me. They had a choir class, a basic computer class, and an elementary Spanish class, and that seems to be about it. They don't have a website, so I can't go through and double check and see if they offer more classes than that, but this is all coming from him. This means he gets a very limited range of subjects that will take him time to overcome when he tries to go to college. The graduation started out with a prayer, then leading the audience in a hymn, followed by bringing out the 10 graduates. So far it wasn't bad. A song and people talking to their invisible friend is fine, perfectly in their rights to do, especially since they're paying for it themselves. Had that been it, and they had just discussed the importance of education and the great times they had, I wouldn't have really had any problems. The graduation was 2 hours long, and they did that for about an hour of pomp and circumstance. However, what really got my goat was they had a preacher come in and give a sermon for graduation, starting the sermon off talking about the greatness of the word conquer, to be victorious, to overcome, like they would be to sin. Conquering is, of course, an ancient term that now has a negative meaning to anyone with any form of empathy, much like that of the word crusade. But that's the kind of mindset in a language that allows them to, instead of turning the other cheek, it pushes them to idealize war. Next, he told a personal story about how doctors had found something in his lungs that looked like a really bad cancer, and after running a lot of tests, they came up negative, which he of course used to claim that God had healed him. Or the doctors saw something that looked really suspicious and they wanted to be really careful because it had a high probability, and it turned out to be wrong. That might be another alternative. Suck to be those good Christian people that it turns out to be right, even though they prayed just as hard and had faith. He went on to talk about how these were the most evil times that have ever been, with the earthquakes, wars, and tsunamis, which he claimed signaled the end times. The entire sermon was scare tactics and propaganda. Data shows us that the number of people worldwide who die in wars are dropping yearly, and the only reason why it appears there are more earthquakes and tsunamis is that human population has risen. This increases the chances of people getting hit by a natural disaster. Plus, we have news reports covering the disasters 24/7. He also discussed the difficulties of the economic market, which I'm glad he didn't lay blame to anybody. Which is, of course, a great way to motivate kids to do their best when they get out of high school. Hey kids, congrats, you graduated. Oh, by the way, you're fucked at getting a job. The last thing he irritated me about was that he used a massive scare tactic about us secularists, who he said want to destroy America by getting rid of religion, which is, of course, a farce. As an atheist, I would like people to vote independent of brainwashing of dogma, but I have no interest in forcefully destroying religion, especially through law. He also failed to mention that the Constitution prevents religion from being in government, which he used to show that we are directly attacking religion by trying to keep government secular. Of my 5 siblings, 4 of us were pissed. They didn't talk about the importance of education, they just tried to spend that time cramming Jesus down our throats. My younger brother and youngest sister sat through the entire sermon trying not to just walk out, thinking hypocrite every phrase the preacher spouted. They were there to support and celebrate my youngest brother, though, so they of course stayed. My lovely Archie Fantasies, of course, didn't make it, as she was at the Center for Inquiry doing the Friday the 13th Superstition Bash, showing how tarot cards, cold reading, and palm reads, and the scam of the balance tricks many people, like the balance bracelet people use, are just scams. Being raised an atheist and unaware of young earth creationists till she started dating me, she would have been shocked to see this ceremony, and probably walked out. Our family grew up on it, so we could stomach it a little bit better. The salutatorian was a preacher's kid with a cocky smirk that just kind of gives you little hints that it's quite probable that he's going to get tanked as often as possible as soon as he gets to college. However, that's a Bible college, which he plans to be a preacher. I wonder how well that's going to go over once he realizes how big the real world is out there. The brainwashing level he showed was insane, citing Orrin Hatch as a hero, and using an example from his own life, very limited of course, about the courage needed to spread the gospel. He said he overheard some big guys mocking religion, specifically the resurrection, and how he worked up his courage to go over and tell the guys they were not right. They looked shocked apparently, and his intrusion to their private conversation did nothing to change their opinion, as that's where the anecdote ended. Kind of fizzled out. The valedictorian was a girl who, of course, couldn't be a pastor, so she was going into nursing, which I think will be an eye-opener to the different types of people that are in the nursing field. She luckily talked mostly about the value of hard work, which gave our rage a bit of a breather. They then prayed over the students and gave out free Bibles. My brother had wanted a Bible verse they wrote on the front of his paper to some obscure verse, but they wouldn't let him. I told him about some of the truly horrific verses like the joys of dashing babies' heads against rocks, and he was even more disappointed he couldn't have used this one. The major reason why I'm bringing this topic up is there is a massive government movement in many red states to fund these types of schools. If you want to spend money to raise your kids and brainwash them into these crazy schools and make sure that they're not prepared for life, that's your right as an American citizen. The problem is, school vouchers programs they are trying to pass off as a way to cut big government is actually going to be handing money over to religious institutions. Indiana is currently either passed or is close to passing a bill that would hand $10,000 vouchers a year to parents who want to send their kids to other private schools. They will also require cash-strapped school systems to pay for bus services to these schools, and if a private school has a special needs kid, they just shove them into the public school. Now the parents can send their kids to these crazy schools using government money. Public schools are constitutional because they at least, in a word, do not respect an establishment of religion, as is in the First Amendment. The use of taxpayer funds is a blatant way to get around the Constitution via argument for free market forces and will hopefully be challenged in the Supreme Court. This sort of bill is being passed in many red states across the nation, and many are completely oblivious to it. Find out if your state is doing this and giving special treatment to religious schools while destroying public education even further than it already has.